Oh, my game. Good morning, Sense of Things. How you guys doing today? We are so glad to see you here, and it is the day before July 4th, a long weekend, a short market day, not a whole lot of information going on in the world besides a employment report this Friday, but it will be a good day. We've got several things that we're going to talk about today. Ron's going to lead us off with a few things that he's been doing some research on. And then I will finish us up with some additional research I've been doing, and it was actually from you guys. You all had asked a bunch of questions about renewable energy and some of the renewable energy plays that are out there. So I did a little research for you and held my nose on some of these to be able to give you some ideas on them. So, Ron, how you doing, my friend?
Good. All right, let's kick this thing off.
Kick this pig.
All right, let me know when you see it.
Almost there. There we go.
So I remember this when it came out 4 years ago. This is very interesting. It's surprising that it took all this time to find out about this, but Irene Triplett, it died in 2020. She was the oldest recipient of getting Civil War money because her father, who was 83 when they had her in 1930, was a Civil War vet. So those Civil War benefits passed on to her $73.13 a month for her entire life. Now think about it. If you were getting $73 a month back in 1870, 1880,
you were living
pretty good living.
Yeah, that's a really good living. Not so much.
It would have been able to buy beach property back then.
Yeah, good God, that's like less than a trip to the grocery store, even on a slow day for me now.
I don't know what you're eating, my man, but that might be half a meal, depending on what you're getting there.
No kidding. Good Lord.
So anyway, I remember this when it came out 4 years ago. When I saw it again, I had to go through it because you'll never see something like this again. This is just crazy. All right, so next one. Color TV existed in the 1950s. The technology had been developed in the 40s, but very few people owned it, and it was so expensive. A TV set back in 1954, color one, was $1,000, over $11,000 today.
And the funny thing is, I think the average house was like $6,000 or $7,000 at that time.
Wow! And don't forget, if you remember, the old screens were a 10-inch diameter circle tube.
Yeah, and those first ones were just like a ghostly shadow and everything else. So
I love the old pictures where people are sitting around a TV that's 10 inches in diameter for a tube, and you got 8 people looking around in complete amazement. Wow. Can you imagine them today? The 4K TVs and the OLEDs look like 3D at night. It's crazy.
Well, imagine, somebody from back then seeing a 70-inch TV that, the people on the screen are bigger than the people in the room.
Unimaginable. Even 30 years ago, it was unimaginable to have a TV that you hang on your wall. So it's interesting. Okay. So let's keep going. So some interesting things about performance during the summer months in the market. June has historically been a month where indices tend to decline.
Okay.
We were up 3.6% last month. So typically June is not a great month. The S&P and the Dow Industrial has finished in negative territory 15 out of the last 39 months, or 38.5% of the time, which basically doesn't give you any real indicator. Okay, great. It's been more positive than negative, but is it so strong for a conviction? No. And then here's the other interesting one. Between October 30th and April 30th, the so-called winter months, the Dow has been up only 1.8%, meaning that the summer months for the Dow are typically good. And if you see what's happened to the Dow in the last 3 months, it's basically been flat.
Yeah.
So
although it had, interestingly enough, it had a lot of days during the month of June that it was on several days, it was the only thing up, and it was up significantly during that time.
Oh, yeah. Oh, Apple had a killer month last month.
Well, Apple did.
In the last podcast, a 2-day move was $400 billion in market cap. Ridiculous.
Well, and Boeing stopped shooting themselves in the foot every day, so that helped immensely.
Yep. Okay, so some of the benchmarks. So June historically has been a relatively flat month. July historically is the best month of the year for the S&P. But rather ironically, last year, July started the 10% pullback through October 27th. So it should be interesting to see, based on our move in the first half of the year, if June continues to be the best month of the year, or is it going to be, the beginning of the slide because of the presidential election year and the time frame from July to October is typically not a great time frame in presidential election years. And then
However,
August,
there is one statistic that
what's
is
that?
in our favor, and that is 69% of the time during the Summer Olympics, the market goes up.
It goes up.
Yep.
Okay, we'll know in the next 2 weeks, right?
There we go.
August has been a relatively weak month historically, only averaging up about 0.3%. Now, so that's typically the performance of the indices. Now, what are typically the best performing sectors? Technology, for crying out loud. If the market's going up, technology's leading the way, as it pretty much has over the last 30 years. Utilities, typically, despite the whole thing with AI and the data centers, the utilities typically do well during the summer. I guess that's a given. People need more electricity for their AC, especially where you and I live. Energy has done well. That also makes sense. People are traveling during the summers. But this is interesting. Real estate. Real estate right now is struggling. I don't know if you've seen some charts of the home builders and whatever, but they had a huge rise at the end of last year into this year. They're back down to 52-week lows.
Yeah. Wow.
So I don't know what's going on there, but I saw yesterday a 30-year fixed rate hit 7.13%.
Yeah.
So who's putting their house up for sale to go get a new mortgage? Not happening. In healthcare has also drawn strong performance when interest rates are rising. And we all know that interest rates are only going to be going in one direction. Chair Powell was out on Monday being interviewed saying higher for longer. How many times have we said that? But here's the other interesting thing that he did state. Not that I was surprised. He said, look, their target, obviously, as we all know, is to get down to 2% inflation. But he said he doesn't expect that to happen in 2024 or in 2025. That means
higher for longer. Yes, he keeps saying.
So with higher for longer, we could count on, struggling with housing, banking, and credit lines being seized up a little bit. We'll see. So anyway, just some interesting facts. And I will state that my AI co-pilot actually helped me create that information.
Awesome. See, I'm in
the 21st century now. I'm getting rid of the hammer and chisel. It'll do all my writing.
You were talking about it. It's interesting because remember we were talking about the healthcare stuff. You had done a piece on that probably in February. So if y'all go back, Ron did a great piece on that, talking about how really the back half of the year, typically healthcare does better. Now, the interesting thing though is from May till now, it has sucked it up back during that time period. So if it's going to start doing something, it's got to start doing something soon. Otherwise, it'll be one of those off years when it comes to that with healthcare.
And also, healthcare is a political football topic too.
Yep.
When they want to talk about insurance and everything else, all the lobbyists get their claws into the politicians. And I am sure, that as we approach the election, that depending on where we are with our candidate, that definitely healthcare is going to be a topic, just as a political football being passed around.
Yeah, and you had that piece in there about real estate. Yes, I think real estate in general is a mess right now, but even from a REIT standpoint, typically that's a sleeve of our portfolios, and it's not been a detractor, I will say, over the last 365 days, but it certainly hasn't been an adder either. It's just mark time, and we've collected dividends, and that's been about it.
Yeah,
from that perspective. And
the
even
healthcare started out on fire in January, February, and it's completely pulled back. So yeah, I think the second half of the year will be good for healthcare. We just have to kind of get some kind of a healthy pullback here in the market to make those things look more attractive for a run into the end of the year.
Absolutely. Like I said, I think from that perspective, I think that was a really good look at the market, and thank God for AI. It makes our lives a whole lot easier when it comes to that. But I think it's an interesting time period. I still hear people in the news constantly, oh, we'll probably have 3 rate cuts before year end. You people are smoking something. It isn't going to happen.
Actually, I'm glad you brought that up again because that's a segue from what I talked about before with Jay Powell,
Yep.
talking about we're not going to get it's going to take another year and a half, right?
Mm.
My point is that they were talking, oh, it'll definitely happen in September. No, they got to wait till after the election. It'll definitely happen in November or December. It doesn't matter when they think it's going to happen. They're already telling you they're on track for inflation, but going to be at least another 18 plus months before they get down there. My whole point is right now, anything that's more than 50% in the Fed futures rate, they're looking as a cut. So they're looking at 2 this year and 3 next year. Forget about, we already ad nauseum last year. We were having fun with it about, they thought there was going to be 6 or 7 this year. But my point is that we'll be lucky if we get 1. And if we do, I think it'll happen after the election. But it's data dependent. It's not going to have, and not only that, but a 1/4 point pullback means nothing.
Yeah.
That's not going to turn head. No, speculators will hop all over that, but it's not going to have a major effect on the market or in lending at all.
Yeah. No, and it's going to take a long while to pull stuff back. The only thing that's going to happen is the short-term rates are immediately going to go down fast because they're already massively, we're still in an inverted yield curve at this point. So no matter what happens, it's going to take, all it's going to do is pull back that short end of the market, and people that have been living on, 5% money markets or 5.25% treasuries in the short run of the market, those are going to pull back fast, and you're not going to have those anymore. But the longer term rates are probably going to stay up there. The mortgage rates and things like that aren't going to come back as
That's
fast.
all right. Hey, look, my conservative clients and my pre-retirees and my retirees are loving those 1 to 6 month rates and just rolling them over as they mature. And conservative, it's risk free, and they can sleep at night.
Yeah, a lot of my money market clients that we've been talking about this, and I said that's going to evaporate fast. So we need to start doing short-term bond ladders basically from now and just keep rolling that stuff over. That'll preserve it as long as we possibly can at this point.
All right, what else you got?
Cool. Let's finish up here and say, folks, thank you for joining us on the show. Love to have you on, and make sure that you're hitting that subscribe button every time. Make sure you're giving us some upvotes. We're getting a ton of those, and we're getting lots of questions, and that segues into the next episode of the show, where we're going to actually take some of your questions and turn those into an episode in and of itself. So you got to tune in for that. We'll see you back here the next time.